Hello and welcome to the Back Nine Report. My name is Carlos Torres, and along with Fred Altvater, every week we check in on the world of golf to bring you the latest news, insights, analysis, interviews, recaps, previews. Hey, we cover anything and everything golf. In other words, if it happened in golf, we have it for you. Fred, hi, how are you this week?
Carlos, I'm fantastic. Had a really great weekend, played in a tournament here at my club here in Cadillac, but I had to play in the super senior division. So I'm feeling a little bit old this week. Okay. Hey, Carlos, information has begun to leak out about last week's not so secret players meeting in Wilmington, Delaware, ahead of the BMW Championship, including Tiger's plan to shape a new PGA Tour. I know we're going to talk about that later, but the New York Post is reporting that 7 more players are thinking to leave the PGA Tour after this week's Tour Championship. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we will, but let's get first to what we talked about also that was happening last week, which was that, like you mentioned, and first of all, let me get back to something I wanted to comment about you and the super senior. That doesn't mean you're old. That
Yes,
means
it
you're
does.
super. Okay.
No, that means I'm super old.
You're super. So anyway, let's get back to the meeting that no so secret, like you're saying, because everybody knew about it. I mean, everybody saw Tiger get off the plane with Ricky Fowler, and it's nice. I mean, he drove himself back, and it gave me flashbacks, really, watching him drive. It's like, oh my God. But anyway, he made it into that meeting with the other 20 players, and there's few details that really have emerged. And of course, this has been the design of it. They're not going to tell you everything about it, but players or people that have knowledge of what happened there say that there's a plan that would see at least the PGA Tour stage 18 tournaments with 60 players and $20 million purses as one of the ideas that was discussed. It's also discussed, hey, let's try to make the PGA Tour also could be renouncing its nonprofit status right now, because they're designated 501c-6, which means they're definitely a nonprofit. But if they do that, they will be able to actually have earnings and distribute it among the way that they really want to, not only having to invest it back as a nonprofit. So let's get started with this, right? Because we see now the PGA Tour is definitely the players, or the main players, are trying to see something done to combat the LIV. And like you're mentioning, there's about 7 players mentioned that are going to be going even after this new meeting that is happening, having this idea of a tour within a tour, which we have said that it should be something done already for the top players, and then everything else would be just feeding tours towards it. We heard last week that they mentioned they want to play more often against the top players, because that will also reduce the field on this 18 tournaments that they were going to be playing. So in a sense, they're just trying to make their own LIV Golf tour out of the PGA Tour. I don't get it. You're just going to call it PGA Tour, but you're making your own tour. So to me, it's a little hypocritical, because you're taking everybody else out and you're making your own tour separated from the PGA Tour. Well, you can call it PGA Tour if you want, but you're not catering to those all other players. You're just taking them away anyways. So let me hear you first, what your first reactions to this are.
Well, a couple of things that you mentioned, Carlos. Number one, giving up the nonprofit status in taking on, a corporate taxable business. I don't know how that benefits the PGA Tour. I don't. That doesn't make sense to me. They're getting all this money and they're not paying taxes on it. It's going right into the retirement program, which they have a fantastic retirement program. they're making fantastic money. They're making much more money than the average person in the United States or in the world makes. Once you earn your PGA Tour card, you're a multimillionaire. Boom, just like that. Between endorsements and appearance fees and all the other stuff, and then prize money that PGA Tour pros earn, they're rich guys. Okay. So how does becoming a regular for-profit corporation benefit the average PGA Tour guy? That doesn't make sense to me. Now, there was rumors, or there's information out that Tiger and Rory were the main two people that are promoting this 18 tournament program. So if you have the 18 tournaments of this elite tour, you have 60 players, you have the 4 majors, that's 22 events a year. That's not too bad, right? Those 60 players, every quarter, they have to earn their spot. So every quarter, 20 players are going to drop off, and 20 more players are going to come up from the DP World Tour or the regular PGA Tour. So it's going to be kind of a liquid situation, kind of a flow. If somebody's hurt and has a bad quarter, boom, they're out. They've got to work their way back. So I can see where that kind of has some merit, because at the end of the year, we see what happens on the Korn Ferry Tour. We see what happens on the PGA Tour, trying to get inside the top 125 bubble. So that might have some merit. I kind of like that. But some of the word out today is that Tiger may actually buy in on a 25% stake of this new corporate structure for the PGA Tour. So Tiger would be a 25% owner of the PGA Tour. Now, Jay Monahan doesn't really work for all the players. He's working for the main stockholders, who 25% ownership would be Tiger Woods. He's working for Tiger, which he's been working for Tiger for a long time. So Tim Finchem, but they were also beholden to all the tour players. So it seems to me, Carlos, that the tour players are giving up the ownership that they already have of the tour. The PGA Tour is owned solely by the PGA Tour members. And don't forget about that retirement program. It's a heck of a program. And they're giving that up to be a for-profit corporation. What's the benefit to the average player? Yeah, they're going to have some bigger purses, but they still got to earn their way into that top 60. They still got to earn their name and recognition to get on the LIV tour. So what's the difference? It's the same deal to me. I don't see the difference in it, Carlos.
Well, there's a few things, and definitely why I don't see it's possible, right, to change from nonprofit to profit, but there's so many things that have to happen. Like, first of all, they're gonna have to reorganize and plan from scratch, because you're gonna have to make a nonprofit conversion. You have to have a liquidation plan, because this is what you're doing. You're liquidating your company. You have to do a valuation, other information that's gonna have to be provided. It's such a complicated process, but it would give your assessment of, or at least the takeaway of Tiger becoming an investor in it. Because the problem that nonprofits have is that the founders, or the people that started, have very limited power on the decision making of what's going to happen on the company. Okay, now if you are for profit, definitely the founders and owners of that company definitely have more say on how is it going to be spent the money, which is something that nonprofits cannot do because of the obvious non-for-profit status, right? But it would set up the possibility of having some other external investors come in and then have a say in what they're going to have their money, whether it's be Tiger, whether it be Rory McIlroy. But then again, how does that look in the eyes of, I'm just making another breakaway circuit at this time? Just what they're doing with the LIV, it's just becoming something right now of the top players. I think they were just, because what you see there that were there were either the top players and the most influential ones in terms of likeness, of their image, of their power, like Tiger and even Ricky Fowler. The only reason why he was there is not because of his play right now, is because he's one of the most recognizable faces right now, and one that somehow still grants recognition, right? So they are trying to make their own tour at this point. I don't see a difference, like you're saying, between what they would be doing in the LIV.
Carlos,
The critical thing,
let's say they go to a for-profit corporation with stockholders, right? So let's say that, just for argument's sake, let's say that Tiger owns 25% of the shares. All right. And Tiger, somewhere down the road, decides that he wants to divest himself of those shares. Now, you can have a publicly traded corporation, or it can be a closely held corporation. So let's say this is a closely held corporation. Okay. Maybe there's some laws that somebody has to have first right of refusal to buy those shares. Well, it's going to be a pretty good chunk of money. Somebody's going to have a pretty deep pocket to buy up 25% of that corporation, right? So what's not to say those babies are out there for the best price? Saudi Arabia comes in, they got all the money and they buy the 25%. Now they own 25% of the PGA Tour. There's a lot that could go wrong with this thing, Carlos.
well, the difference there is that when you do your articles of organization, you can actually say how those shares are going to be spent, or who you are going to allow to become part of or not, and the right of refusal from the other stakeholders or not as well. So as long as he's not the majority owner, which he won't be, because if it's 25%, there's 75% of other stakeholders that are going to decide really what's going to happen. But then again, in your point, for sake of conversation, is you're making it open to anybody that can come in and invest and take over, because that's what happens in the business world when you're a for-profit corporation, is that,
or a publicly traded corporation.
Yeah, and when that happens, you definitely are open to aggressive takeovers. It's something that happens all the time, and there's a little less control that you're going to have. And like you're saying, hey, what if Saudi Arabia now says, I am going to spend and I'm going to start buying shares here and there? What are you holding on? Because then they would be able to bring both tours into one, like they would like to do. But again, I don't know. There's so many things that the PGA Tour and the players. I really want to know who are those 7 players. Everybody, have been talking about that since the Athletic report, that Cam Smith is one, and the other one is Mark Leishman. There should be 5 others, but
I have some names. I have some names that they think should be the ones to go. Let me see. I got them here. Joaquin Neiman's one. Hideki is one. Adam Scott is one. We've got who else? Oh, Annabon, Lahiri, Harold Bonner, Cameron Tringali. Those are the 7, along with Leishman, Matsuyama, Neiman, Cam Smith.
Well, if that is the case, again, they're losing a very good young star and rising star in Joaquin Neiman. Cam Smith, of course, the world's number 2 player, and definitely Hideki Matsuyama, a very influential Asian player that's right now a key acquisition for them, because
that's Asia and Japan right now, just like that.
Yeah, immediately that Asian market becomes granted for them, because you are talking about arguably the most recognizable Asian player and top player basically on the world right now. So LIV Golf, the PGA Tour, what you think is going to be next right now really is going to happen with the PGA Tour?
Well, Carlos, this seems like a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to me. And I know Tiger wouldn't do something that out of haste. I'm sure he's looked at all angles, and he's had advisors talking to him, and they've been going through the numbers and looking at things from all angles. And so, they obviously are much smarter than we are. But I just come back to the point that I don't see how going to a for-profit corporation really helps the average PGA Tour pro. And that's not to mention all the charities that count on the money that PGA Tour events generate when they come into their town. Now, maybe they're going to have some structure that the sponsors will pay all the costs and, you know, make their profit from that, and ticket sales and all this other stuff will go to the charities. So they'll still be getting some money, maybe not as much. The other part of that is that these tournaments depend on a tremendous number of volunteers, and these volunteers do that job so that the charities that they work for, the charities that they promote, are being benefited because they're working the tournament. So if you need 1,200 volunteers or 800 volunteers, and all of a sudden these charities aren't getting this money, and the volunteers say, well, I'm not going out there for a bunch of guys that are just doing it for profit. Hell with that. Now where are you going to get your people? You're going to have to start paying all these people. Now, the Masters does it. Okay, they pay everybody. There's no volunteers in the Masters. Everybody's paid. Everybody's employee of Augusta National or the Masters tournament. And they do it fantastic. And they still make a lot of money. But that's the Masters. That's not the John Deere Classic. Okay. So it's just a whole different deal, Carlos. You know, if they, you know, we keep talking about this, but we talked about a World Golf Tour over 2 years ago. And they can bump, they've already bumped of the 40 tournaments they got next year, they bump up the purses on the invitationals and the big tournaments, the Players, you know, the Memorial, the Palmer, the Genesis, and some of these tournaments. I mean, they're going to have, they bumped up the FedEx Cup champion this year to 18 million. A lot of these tournaments next year are going to have $20 million purses. That's a big bump when they're going from $8 million to 20 all of a sudden. And then if you have this elite tour with 60 players, you know, it's just, where's all this money going to come from? The other part of this that we haven't talked about, and you made a point of it this week to me, that, and we've been talking about this for a couple of years too, that live streaming now, more people watch golf via live streaming than network by a large margin. Okay. So the advertising dollars are not going to be there for CBS and NBC and Fox. It's not. So these big billion-dollar contracts to broadcast PGA Tour events just not going to be there. They're going to have to get it via the streaming or maybe some of their own production facilities. So, Carlos, there's a lot of stuff going on here. We're not privy to all of it for sure, and we can only kind of sit on the outside and look at it and make our what we see and make some projections. But what's next? I can't tell you. All I can tell you is that we'll be here next week and we're going to be talking about
it. That's what's next, definitely. And again, what's going to happen with the PGA Tour? Will there be doing that 18 tournament schedule that they would do with the 60 players? Who's going to determine who those 60 players are? Plus, those are 18 tournaments, but you're not talking about the 4 majors. So now you're up to 22 events. And hey, how many do they have to actually play? Because there has to be like a minimum required starts. If you got to justify your spot in the top 60, you're going to have to play in about all those 18, or you're going to be out. Which is the issue, right? Which is how you're going to set up that type of minimum. If you can apply actually minimum required starts, how many are they going to be, and how is it determined? And if you're not there, because that affects, like you're saying, the sponsors, which we talked about. Now with streaming, it's a very different situation. So it's going to be the PGA Tour really reselling their streaming rights, or how is it going to be? There's so many things in there that would be simplified by just sitting down, calling Greg Norman, let's talk, let's just forget about this thing. And we know this is about money, because it is about money, because otherwise, why would they be bringing up those purses if it wasn't for money? And the last thing that I'm going to say is there's been so much made up about the legacy of the tour, the history that is being made from this tournament and this tournament, it's going to change all of a sudden, because there's going to be a tour of 18 events that they're going to be the same tournaments, maybe that have the history and all that stuff, but it's a totally different tour, a totally different feeling that you're going to have. It's not the same thing about the year-long tour and you grinding and playing there and your events and picking your spots here and there. So definitely it's going to be we have been talking about this. It's going to be, golf is not going to be the same after next year, for sure. Maybe because the lawsuit is going to be seen in 2024, there's going to be some back and forths next year that we're going to see, maybe more players going to the LIV. And if that happens, that's when definitely something's going to have to start shifting, and they're going to have to sit down and talk about it and come up with some joint product.
Yeah, the only other points I want to make, Carlos, is that the U.S. District Judge Beth Freeman has set a tentative date for the top summary judgment on the antitrust suit for July 23rd of 2023. The PGA Tour will likely seek to dismiss the case, and then the trial date is expected to begin on January 8th, 2024. So we're still a long ways away. There's going to be a lot of legal maneuvering. A lot of motions are going to be filed with the court, and those will have to be looked at and ruled on. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff happening. And Carlos, all I know is that the FedEx Cup Playoff Tour Championship is this week. And we should be talking about, can Scotty Scheffler win the FedEx Cup? Can Patrick Cantlay repeat, be the only repeat winner ever? Will Zalatoris' back hold up, and is he going to be a factor? What about Xander Schauffele? Can somebody else, other than those top four players, make up the strokes that they have to make up to even be a factor? We should be talking about that. And all we're talking about is the LIV, the PGA Tour changing their structure, and it's all forced because of the LIV thing. It's just mind-boggling.
It is. And anyway, if you want to keep knowing about this, hey, we're here on a weekly basis. We're keeping you up to date with what's going on with both the PGA Tour and the LIV, and this is not going away. Definitely, it's going to be maybe a weekly topic or something, but it's been lately, and it's just interesting to see what's going to happen, because we love the sport of golf, and we have to see how is it going to turn out. So thank you for joining us. It's always our pleasure to bring you the latest in golf news and information. Remember to subscribe to our channel. The description has how to do it. It's just a quick one click. Thank you for joining us.